Before 1770, the lands that would become Kentucky contained scattered Native American villages and the encampments of a small number of European hunters, explorers, and surveyors. By 1820, the population of the new Commonwealth had grown to over 500,000. During this period, river landings rose into ports. Forts and farmsteads grew into villages. Kentucky itself would become a national crossroads for immigration, commerce, and the westward expansion of the United States. Historic archaeologists are working to better understand this era and the daily lives of the people who established the 15th state of the Union. In 1983, archaeologist Nancy O'Malley launched a major research project into the frontier stations of the inner bluegrass region. During the Revolutionary War, American settlers built hundreds of fortified wooden cabins to defend against British and Indian attacks. Yet, in order to study these early settlement sites, O'Malley first had to find them.
Archaeological investigation often begins here in the archive. By doing archival research first, you go into the field armed with enough information that you can often recognize what you're seeing and interpret it more accurately than you would if you went in and didn't really know what to expect.
There are few traces of frontier stations on the modern landscape. When hostilities ended after 1783, settlers dismantled these crude wooden structures. Families spread out, using the timbers from these stations to build more substantial farmsteads. In time, the location of most frontier stations faded from memory.
I eventually compiled a large number of sites that had been called stations by someone at some point. And from there, I started looking at each individual station. For over 150, that turned out to be a pretty laborious job, maybe a little bit bigger than I had originally anticipated. But it also turned out to be a fascinating journey into the past.
O'Malley has conducted excavations at several frontier sites, including Fort Boonesborough. The original site is preserved today in Fort Boonesborough State Park. Established in 1775, Fort Boonesborough was a large defensive structure occupied by several families. The fort protected settlers from British and Indian attacks. After the American Revolution, this large fortification was no longer needed. Prone to floods, Fort Boonesborough was soon abandoned. In 1987, O'Malley conducted excavations to learn more about daily life at this iconic site in Kentucky's history.
One of the key things that we found was the remains of a cabin chimney. And then another really key find, which was a great find, was a hearth that was absolutely chock full of domestic and wild animal bone. And when we had the faunal analysis done, it read like a grocery list for pioneer diet, bison, cattle, just all kinds of other critters. I think it gives us a bigger picture. A lot of the documentary evidence will mention the key animals like white-tailed deer as being a big part of the diet. But we know from this one feature here at Boonesborough that they were eating a wide range of animals.
A replica of Fort Boonesborough has been built near the original site. Each year, this popular living history museum attracts thousands of visitors. O'Malley's research has been incorporated into various exhibits, as well as authentic demonstrations about life on America's first western frontier. Archaeologists have documented hundreds of sites dating to the frontier period in Kentucky. Each one has a unique story to tell. In Edmonson County, archaeologists continue to investigate early saltpeter mining in Mammoth Cave. During the War of 1812, Kentucky led the nation in the production of saltpeter, an essential ingredient in gunpowder. This research documents leaching vats, wood pipes, and the hazardous work conducted mostly by slaves. And in Logan County, archaeologists excavated the John Arnold farmstead, one of the earliest European settlements in southwest Kentucky. This investigation challenged popular notions that the Pennyrile region was completely isolated and poor during the frontier period. Evidence of imported goods and a diet rich in both native plants and European crops suggests the Arnold family was well connected and well fed.
Historical archaeology fills in the gap because it looks at the specific sites where settlers lived. It collects artifacts that they used. Also, I think, too, it speaks to what people bring with them that they value. And I think in the case, for instance, of Mary McGarry, whose assemblage we have, you know, she obviously brought in some treasured dishes. And it may have just been a few plates and a couple of teacups. They didn't lose sight of what they came here for, and that was to eventually begin leading a life that was a little bit more like the one they left behind. The deprivations that they were undergoing as settlers, they knew were going to be temporary, and they were looking forward, I think. And some of the things they brought with them helped them remember that goal.